had like change of directors, you know.
This is great stuff, Jamie.
Amazing points I'm making here.
Picture House, like he used to buy movies for them. Now he's working for the IFF. He's the new director, and yeah, the program is very different from previous years. It's roughly the same size, I would say, but its focus is quite different.
No.
It's like previously on the Cineskinny. Hello and welcome back to the Cineskinny. It's the film podcast from the team behind the Skinny magazine. We're having a great time. Everyone's here. It's me, Jamie, Ellie, and Anahit. They're redoing or moving into the new EHFM spot at ground floor, so we're in a meeting room. Everyone say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Only the men have mics, because that's the way it should be.
Men?
Yeah. Also, I don't want this before anyone starts. This wasn't this was my intention. Every time I go off this podcast, I get accused of something, and now I'm on it, and I'm self-perpetuating. This is a shit show. Anyway, on this week's episode, we're going to talk about the Edinburgh International Film Festival, which begins in 1 week's time. We're all going to be at the opening party. It's going to be great fun. The lads on tour, by which I mean 2 minutes away from where this office is. So we've got 3 films from the IFF program that we're going to talk about. And as you heard at the top of the episode, if you want to hear our more general thoughts on the IFF program, we did that on the last one. And then we played a bit of it into the microphone. It was very, very funny. I may have cut it out. It might not have actually sounded very good. But tell you what, in the room, it really worked. So before we get going, does anyone have anything additional to what they've said in the past that they would like to say about the Edinburgh Film Festival this year? Jamie Dunn, I'm looking in your direction.
Yes, well, I just hope it goes very well. It's had a couple of rough years, and I hope it does very well.
Excellent. He's not even reading that off a card. He genuinely believes it. Ellie, have you got anything to add to that? Are you being treated well?
Yeah, not particularly. I kind of am enjoying how kind of trim the program has been this year and last year as well. Like, it's just a little less overwhelming than it was right before. I think it was 2022. That was just like huge, right?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's much bigger.
Has so much stuff to do. Like, you don't need a huge film festival program.
Yeah, especially during the Fringe. It's still like, I think it's still hard to see all those films within 5 days. But yeah, I think it is. Yeah. You're right. It's like, if it's a bit more
and it's like everything looks so much more dazzling when there's just fewer things on the page. You're like, oh, you get the time to actually read them and be like, oh, I do want to see that.
The thing is, when a festival has like 100 films or 200 films, you know a lot of them are going to be shit. So like, at least if you have like 30 films, there's a good chance that they're going to be half decent, I think.
Yeah.
So
the pressure is on.
Yeah.
Anahit, do you have anything to add to that?
I still have this cough. Do I have anything to add? No, I think I still feel like the film festival should move back to June.
I so agree.
This is my main opinion about the film festival, because the program actually does look really interesting. Some of the stuff, there were quite a few things that when we were thinking about what we want to review for the podcast, there were several films I wanted to see that we couldn't see because they were world premieres, and they do have this amazing slate of world premieres, and I probably won't see any of them because I have 5 other festivals to do. So it would be nice if they moved back to a less hectic time. But other than that, program looks sick.
It does seem to me a festival set up more for industry, I would say, this year. Like, I feel like the idea is, well, I could be wrong, but like, it seems to be the idea is like, you get all these world premieres, so you're going to get like people like Variety, and the trade magazines are going to be really interesting coming up. So like, it's going to make the festival more important, I guess, on an international stage. The question is, will that transfer over to like being like very audience friendly? You know, if you look at what Glasgow doesn't really worry about world premieres. It's much more about like, is this film going to appeal to our audience?
Yeah.
And like, because of that, you don't always get like the big journalists from like London coming out. But I think this is a program aimed for that. But yeah, can it go beyond that and reach, a wider audience across Edinburgh? That's the kind of tricky thing when the festival's on. But yeah, I think, there is something really exciting about seeing something brand new that nobody else in the world has seen. That is quite appealing, to some people.
But they said, didn't they, last year that like the numbers for attendance had gone like really up. They were like really, really strong, I think. But then last year it felt it was more of these are the films that everyone has been talking about for ages and ages, like Past Lives and Passengers and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see which way it goes. But I mean, I obviously hope it does well. I just will not be helping it too.
Yeah, it's also tricky because I don't live in Edinburgh, so like I'm not going to be able to go to any of these kind of late night things, which look really fun. Like the idea of going to like see The Substance at midnight, you know, or Alien at midnight sounds really cool to me. But yeah, like unfortunately, I'm gonna have to.
The bus runs 24 hours, baby.
I'm too fragile to go on that bus. Have you seen people who travel on that bus?
No, I've never been on that bus late at night.
They're terrifying.
Okay.
You know, you have to be hammered to be on that. Like it's only fun if you're drunk. So
you could get hammered.
That's true. Yeah.
Something to consider.
So the film festival's back.
I'm gonna hand this mic back.
Yeah, good job.
I was going to say I was sick on that bus once and people clapped me. So my memory is the shame of that time that
So you
I
should,
can't go back.
you should see stuff at the Midnight
Jamie,
Mass,
maybe
have a
it is
hero's
that.
return to the late night megabus.
Yeah, Jamie's like, I wonder why I have such a fraught relationship with the Midnight Megabus. Is it because I vomited on it once and people clapped? Nah, it couldn't possibly be that.
I love how you're saying like, oh, the people on that bus, they're like party animals, they're wild.
I once saw a guy be so sick everyone clapped.
I mean, that is very supportive, I guess. Like that's actually very nice. It's quite
Exactly, it's camaraderie.
Yeah, it does bring you together, but yeah.
What else is going to bring
I
us?
don't want to go on because there's people like me on it being sick.
Jamie walking up to the bus doors getting spooked by his own reflection, sprinting off down the street. Right, anyway, first film, I think. So we'll do Between the Temples first. So, Between the Temples, Jason Schwartzman is Ben. He is a cantor at his local synagogue in upstate New York, mourning the death of his wife, who was an author. He runs into his old music teacher, Carla, who's played by Carol Lake, and she is looking for someone to help her prepare for an adult bat mitzvah. This is directed by Nathan Silver, and it has its UK premiere.
You see Carol Lake?
Is it Carol Lake or Carol Lane?
Carol Kane.
Carol Kane. So it's neither Lake nor Kane. Well, this is interesting. Oh, I've been foolish here.
We are recording very early on in the morning.
Yeah, we are, by which you mean 20 past 11. Carol Lane. Famed.
Kane.
What the fuck?
Carol Kane. Third time's a charm. Oh, things are going well. Right. So yeah, Carol Kane, Jason Schwartz.
Jim Schwartz. Miger.
UK premiere. What did you think, Jamie? Do you think the film was good? Do you remember who was in it? Do you know where you are?
Yeah, just like respect for Carol Kane. I love Carol Kane. You're not a Kimmy Schmidt fan? Come on, man.
No.
He has
Just me.
passed his mic away so he can't defend himself.
Yeah, I was just like super charmed with this. Yeah, it's got a really kind of off-kilter sense of humour, lovely kind of salty sweet flavour that I found really appealing. I thought Jason Schwartzman and Carol Kane were just like a fun pairing, you know, really good as this Ben and Carla, I think they're called. I like how Schwartzman's now at the age where he can start playing these kind of like sad sack losers. You know, he's like lost his kind of like youthful look, and he's like looking a bit kind of Paul Giamatti like, and he's like perfect for this. I guess he kind of did that in the last Wes Anderson film. He also played like a widow who was like sad and depressed, and I think
He was sexier in that somehow.
he was
Yeah.
I think he's put on a bit more weight for this. I don't know if he did it for the film or just like
And
naturally.
he had like a beard in that one.
yeah.
In this one, he does give sort of Michael Scott energy.
Yes, that is my one note.
Oh, sorry.
It's just didn't he remind you all of Steve Carell so much?
Yeah, so he can now
Crazy.
play his roles. So
Okay.
so he can be sexy and schlubby. It's great. It's like he's got range. Yeah, so like I really like that idea of him playing these type of roles. Yeah, and I think they had super great chemistry. I think that the script could have probably done more about developing this relationship, because it comes a bit like Harold and Maude, you know, this kind of like, you know, winter, spring or winter, summer relationship. But it's not, I think it's actually the performances that bring that together rather than the script. I think the script's just more interesting at being kind of funny, you know, like, so, yeah, so like the central premise does sound really kind of cloying and corny, but I quite like how the film kind of ignores the central premise. The central premise is this guy, this cantor who can't sing anymore. You think, oh, that's like a kind of quite a cheesy idea, a cheesy metaphor, but it kind of like has that, it kind of forgets that for a while and just like actually just concentrates on the characters. It's also got this kind of really kind of pugnacious energy, and I think that part of that's Sean Price Williams, or Sean William Price. I always forget Sean Price Williams. Who's the cinematographer who we talked about a few months ago for The Sweet East. So he's been cinematographer on a lot of like really good American indie films. And yeah, he's got this kind of handheld style which really works with the awkward comedy. This kind of 60mm cinematography that's really kind of jagged and like edgy, and it kind of fits well with the characters who are like just like nervous and anxious and yeah, going through all sorts of like neuroses. And the editing as well is really fun. It's like, you know, it's quite often out of sync with the dialogue, and it's just full of like really fun little transitions, like those like old school kind of iris closing effects, and yeah, it's just full of like surprising moments, especially in these kind of excruciating like dinner scenes, where everybody's talking over each other and the editing's really choppy. So it really just adds to the discomfort of watching the comedy. So yeah, it's just full of like fun, wonderful, funny scenes. There's a great scene in a graveyard where Ben uses his ex-wife's saucy phone calls to like get laid, essentially. It's like, yeah, an amazing scene in a diner where Carol and Ben are like, you know, she's taken him to her favourite burger joint and they're having this really deep conversation. But you can't understand what they're saying because they're just spraying like burgers everywhere. They're really enjoying this burger and their mouth's full. So it's full of those kind of disgusting, like in your face moments, but like yeah, it's also got a real kind of sweet, like tender side that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this.
I agree. I was actually first interested in this film because I think that the first film I ever saw at a film festival might have been Uncertain Terms, also by Nathan Silver, at Edinburgh like 10 years ago, which was the story of a man who sort of he abandons his like crumbling marriage. His wife isn't dead, but like they're set for a divorce, and he runs away and like to his mother's secluded commune for like pregnant teenage girls. So it seems between these two films that Nathan Silver is like interested in dealing in like focusing on middle-aged men who don't deal with their problems. But it's like Jason Schwartzman in this role, and you're right, like he does. It is like a sort of it's new territory for him. I think like he is like emanating a lot of like comedic energy by just being very disaffected and like mumbly and, you know, a bit broken, and he's doing it really well. And like you kind of, you know, the natural progression of the film would see that he would grow, and like this sort of like, you know, more positive journey is laid out for him because his community and his family seem super supportive. But then as time goes on, you sort of realize that they're all a little high strung and they're all quite like oppressive at times. And Carol Kane is everything they're not, right? She's like very weird and uplifting and liberating. But she's not the manic pixie dream girl that is sort of like, you know, you might infer from the synopsis, right? The film isn't that reductive, and this little saga doesn't end in like triumphant growth, but actually like a lot of domestic chaos. And yeah, I mean, I did sort of, I feel like now I've seen so much of Sean Price Williams' work that I'm really like being able to sort of like attune to that frequency. Like we did The Sweet East. So if you like The Sweet East, you'll probably like this film. It does sort of feel like one of those vignettes of The Sweet East, which is just a little sort of like microcosm of a little capsule of like modern American life and how, you know, this community is like functioning through the dysfunction. But we also saw Sean Price Williams' work earlier on the podcast when we did Funny Pages, and that also ends in this kind of like really raucous sort of implosion of this family. And yeah, but it's funny, you know. I think that's sort of what that adds. I think that adds like a real level of humor to it that I didn't really get from that other Nathan Silver film all those years ago. You know, there's a point where Carol Kane and Robert Smigel like almost crash into each other in their car because they're both like driving after Jason Schwartzman, and then they're like politely introducing themselves to each other but yelling from their driver's seat. It's just sort of that thing where like everybody lacks self-awareness, so you get to just watch the bonds between these characters erode over the film due to the fact that there's not really like a singular voice of reason. Like all of these characters are a bit naff. So if that sounds like a good time, then you would probably enjoy Between the Temples.
Yes, I agree. I thought it was very charming, like really tender and sweet, and like really just good at building like each of the characters out really, really well. Like the supporting cast is really, really good. Like his two mothers, which was just like such a sweet little idea. And one of them is Dolly De Leon, who was like stole the show in, what was that fucking film about the ship called? Triangle of Sadness. Yeah. Like they're so good. That one scene where he goes to dinner with Carla's family and her son is like so insufferable. Like he's the worst man you've ever met in your life. He's immediately like, what is going on between the two of you?
I understand. I would have asked that same question. What's going on here?
I think I'd be more subtle about it. I would not be that aggro.
I think I got triggered when he described himself as a devout atheist.
Yeah, I was like, what does that mean, babe?
It's when he started like making everyone's orders. I was like, oh,
yes,
I hate
yeah,
it.
you're a dickhead. But it was like such good like visual comedy as well because they have like those huge fucking menus. It was such a good visual gag. So yeah, it does like a really, really good job of kind of building out this like world in like a way that feels both really like deep but also like quite intimate, and also has that thing that I think Shiver Baby did really well of just filming chaos. So there's like the scene towards the end, that dinner scene, which I won't spoil what happens, but there's like the girl that starts like hysterically crying, the one that like really fancies Jason Schwartzman. It's just like really funny. Like yeah, he's very, very good at like filming and making it feel like it's chaotic, even though it's clearly so well planned, like who gets seen at one point and how they're behaving. And yeah, I just thought it was a really beautiful examination of grief. The way that each of their like partners haunts the film feels really powerful, but in such an unschmaltzy way. The fact that his main kind of, when he talks about like the loss of his wife is, yeah, these like dirty voice notes that she used to leave him. I just think that's sexy and nice. That's what it should be like when you lose your partner.
It's just like, but then you have 755 messages.
Yeah. It's so good. So yeah, I thought it was really charming. I think I agree with you that like it felt a little, it wasn't like quite there to be like an incredible film. There were parts of it that felt like maybe a little bit meandering or a little bit like surface level. But I really liked it. And actually, now that you've kind of said, I didn't put together that's who the cinematographer was. And I'm like, oh, that's why it looks so beautiful. Because I did not like The Sweet East, but it was pretty. So
I think the word jagged is perfect. You said it. It's sort of the way of like just where the camera is at times, and there's sort of questionable decisions, right? Like, you know, but it just makes it feel that much more like awkward and weird and bumpy. But that kind of works for the films. Like there's, you know, snap zooms on the backs of people's heads and stuff like that. Like it's very sort of like listless and wandering.
It can at times the dialogue feels improvised, but also the filmmaking just feels improvised. It's like, oh, we'll try it this way. That, you know, it feels like it's just been found. Well, it probably wasn't actually. It's probably all quite intentional, but it feels very like discovered.
It's got a good drug trip scene, and I feel like you have to have a really good sort of like cinematographer for a good drug trip scene.
I also love the running gag about the rusty door.
Yeah,
it's like that got me every time. I was just like, this is hilarious. Like this door that screams. It's like yeah. So it's full of really good like gags. Even the opening gag, it's like it's such a corny gag, but like it's the first scene, so I'll spoil it. It's like where the two mothers are like, yeah, we think we need to see a doctor, and he says, yeah, I agree, I need to see a doctor. Oh right, they're here. And it's like, yeah, and then there's like about 3 subtle levels of the gag about what type of doctor it is, which is all it's just like it had me from that opening scene. It's like such a corny, it's like a really old school setup, like an old Jewish comedian setup for a scene, but the whole film felt like a 70s film. I think. Do you think it kind of looked a bit like I don't know if you saw The Holdovers as well. That kind of
no, but I really wanted to. But I was also thinking that as I was watching this, I was like, I bet this is what The Holdovers is like.
Yeah. Words right out of my mouth. Oh. Honestly, yeah. Like if you really like, no, I'm not. How dare you? No, I mean like if you really enjoyed The Holdovers, it's of that same kind of ilk, a bit of a kind of nice, small, well put together, well acted, well performed, kind of quite witty, but also quite like emotionally interesting film. Just a good wee film. Mm-hmm. Good wee film with folk you've heard of, and once you really try, can remember their names. Between the Temples, it's good. I recommend from us.
And a good one to see with a crowd, I think. Because I think actually on a big screen, because there's lots of visual gags like in the production design, which I think I'd probably see more if I saw it on a big screen. And I think the kind of running gags would actually be really fun with an audience, you know.
Yeah, so it's a good one, I think, if you're looking for something in the program that you might be like, because obviously film festival programs there's going to be a lot of things that are a bit more avant-garde, a bit more out there, a bit more interesting, shall we say. Whereas this is just like a good film that you will enjoy. That's the Cineskinny promise. So it is on a bunch of times, if that sounded interesting. It's on Friday the 16th of August at 9:15 at 50 George Square. It's also on at 9:30 the same night at Summer Hall. It's on Saturday the 17th at 9:15 p.m. at In Space, which is the building on the corner near, like, round the back of Bristol Square. And it's also on Sunday the 18th at 4:30 at the Cameo, and that is a pay what you can show. So I think tickets are between £3 and £11. If you want to go along, then that might be a good time to backfill your film festival program. Also, I believe it's the 9:30 at Summer Hall is captioned with hard of hearing captions. So accessibility, you'll love to see it. And if you can't make any of those many screenings that are all over the same weekend, it is out across the UK from the 23rd of August. So that's Between the Temples. It's quite good. And before I forget, Letterboxd. We have a Letterboxd, and when I remember to, we put all the films that we've reviewed on the podcast on the Letterboxd. So Between the Temples, what did we all think? Jamie, I'll come to you first.
I think I'll give this it's a high 3, so I'll go 4.
Okay. That's the highest 3 you can get. The next number up, Ellie.
I'll go with the 4.
The 4. That's the 3 and a bit, and then another bit.
I will also go for the high 3/4.
What I'm saying is it's not a low 4. It's a high 3. So.
But you're saying it's a 4.
Yeah, well, that's all I can do. This is the problem.
What? What are you saying?
Well, it's a high 3.
Well, then why isn't it a 3.5?
Because that would be a mid 3.
There's also something so fantastic about you saying what you just said and then following it up with the line, "That's all I can do."
Well, this is like,
if you can think of a better way of explaining this, and don't just say go to the next number.
No. when you're star rating something, do you not often think actually it's between these stars? But how can I express that?
Okay, tell me in like decimal what you would give it.
3.77.
That is a high 3. That's gone beyond 3 3/4. That's like a high 3.
That is a high 3.
That's a high 3.
It is in fact a 4.
Think of a number between 1 and 5. Second follow-up question: how high is that number?
From now on, we're marking these out to the 2 decimal places.
Okay.
No, from now on, you have to give a number, but then also like a modifier for that number. It's like a 3, but a spry 3, like quick on its feet. So that's Between the Temples. It's good.
It is good. What would you give it?
It's high 3 good.
High 3.
I'd just give it a 4, and then that'd be the end of this bit. Okay, the heat in the room is slowly rising, and I feel we're all going a tiny little bit insane. So it's just time to move on to our next film, which is kind of apt for a slightly hysterical, a bit all over the place, jumping around from timeline to timeline. I'm looking directly at Ellie because we're going to talk about this one. It's Timestalker, which is the new film from British alternative comedy legend Alice Lowe. So Alice Lowe plays Agnes, who is a woman in, I believe, 16th or 17th century Scotland, who falls in love at first sight with a heretic moments before his planned execution. Alice Lowe also plays the put-upon wife of an English nobleman in Georgian times. She is obsessed with a dandy highwayman who works in the nearby forest. Alice Lowe also plays a new romantic who is infatuated with a 1980s pop star. This is a kind of time-jumping, big costume, fun time, written and directed by Alice Lowe, with Nick Frost off of Shaun of the Dead, Jacob Anderson, who played Grey Worm in Game of Thrones, Tanya Reynolds from Sex Education, Kate Dickie, and Anurin Bernard who played Boris in the BBC War and Peace and was also in Dunkirk, and a bunch of other things. But Ellie, I would say, and feel free to correct me, in the spirit of today's episode, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. This is very much the Alice Lowe show, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We will get into just like how much of a specific vision there is behind this film, but it was really fun. It's a really fun film. If you enjoyed like Netflix's Russian Doll with Natasha Lyonne or BBC's Ghosts, it's kind of like, you know, very much in keeping with these. I feel like when I first heard about it, it would have been very easy, I think, for the film to just be a rom-com with science fiction-y sort of tonal touch points. To me, when I think of like a romance fantasy film, the one that I always think of is like Ghost 1990 with Patrick Swayze. Like that's the perfect conventional romantic structure with a few supernatural elements. But you know, this is not that. This is not just a rom-com where people are wearing cunty historical outfits. This is like a very fleshed out sort of Neil Gaiman-y, like speculative fiction story. You know, like not to give away spoilers, but it's one of those stories where like the characters become aware of the fact that they are characters in a story, and you know they form a relationship with the film's internal mythology. It's not exactly clear like who is perpetuating this, like who's writing this story, but there is a lot of like there's a strong theme of destiny and sort of like, you know, being trapped in your fate. If you've ever seen like, you know, that sort of like narrative trope that gets quite fan fictiony, the whole like I would find you in any lifetime sort of thing, like this is a film that sort of really satisfies on the narrative potential of reincarnation. So it, you know, it has depth, but it's also a very pretty film. It's got this very surrealist lighting. We literally were just talking last episode about I Saw the TV Glow and how it had all these really bold pinks and blues. This is, you know, exactly the same. It's sort of giving that CMYK core. And also, you know, everyone in it is so fun. Jacob Anderson is in it. Jacob Anderson is so hot. I thought I was crazy for bringing up Interview with the Vampire like 3 times across the course of this podcast. But Edinburgh Film Festival has given me more. It's given me more Jacob Anderson in period costume. It's like, oh my God, maybe I'm the Timestalker. It's probably... I don't know. I don't want to confidently say that it is like a laugh out loud film. It's probably more fun than funny, but there are definitely like a couple of really good gags. And it just reminded me like earlier this year, there was a film, I hate to bash on it because I had such high hopes for it, called Seize Them, that was like putting a lot of like good British TV comedians like Lolly Adefope and James Acaster on this like medieval sort of comedy film. Which was kind of like lukewarm, but Alice Faye is like bringing in people like Mike Wozniak has like a recurring thing, and you know Dan Renton Skinner, and they're all like really comfortable on screen. They all seem to be working really well with this unique vision, just giving it everything they've got. So I would absolutely love to see this film again. Yeah,
it's really, really good. I think all those kind of touchstones you talked about are obviously really important. I think that fans of The Mighty Boosh and Garth Marenghi's Dark Place and a lot of the things that Alice Lowe worked on in the 2000s will have a great time with this, because it has the same thing that those programs had, which is like incredible invention and incredible commitment to the bit. And it has a very similar kind of like high-end lo-fi aesthetic where there's clearly like some money, but not a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But there's this commitment to getting as much as you possibly can out of the things that you're doing. And when you decide you're going to have a big, massive Georgian wig, it's a fucking big wig. This thing is a unit. And then they bring out a second wig, which is even bigger. And yeah, the thing of like just really great use of color, really great use of visuals. I think it does something really interesting visually with this kind of time jumping. It just lets you have fun with different costumes and different like visual aesthetics and different kind of... it means that every scene looks kind of different from the last one, and that does help cover some of the things. Like say maybe it's missing 1 or 2 big laughs, and it is a tiny little bit completely all over the place. Like it's by no means is this a perfect film, but it keeps itself moving along really nicely. Jacob Anderson and Tanya Reynolds are both really, really good in it. Tanya Reynolds plays this kind of like recurring best friend character who, like you say, is one of the characters who sort of realizes they're in this kind of loop. And I think that as well, you hear Timestalker, and I think actually one of the things that's quite interesting about this film is it kind of, the way that some of the promotional material around it and some of like the blurbs around it have sort of like, they lead you in one direction and actually things are going in a slightly different direction. Now, I can't say much more than that, other than to say that to say any more than that would be a gigantic spoiler for, I would argue, the entire plot of the film. So I'm going to stop going down this blind alley that I've started wandering down and simply say that this is a good film and that you should go and see it. And I think going to see it on the big screen as well will be good because you'll get it in the best quality possible. Me and you both had some minor issues with our streamer in that it occasionally looked like the entire of my TV screen was covered in butter, but there you go. And yes. But yeah, no, really, really good, really inventive, and like just really good to see Alice Lowe, who is at times felt a little bit like one of the forgotten members of that group of British alternative comedians with like Julian Barrett and Noel Fielding and Paul King, who's now gone on to be Big Paddington Man and stuff. That she was like a really key part of that group of actors, your kind of Iowadis and Matt Berries and stuff, and has kind of gone on a different path to some of them. But it's really good to see that she's being backed to make a film like this and doing a really good job of it as well.
Mm-hmm. It feels really fresh. It does feel like, I mean, that's the thing is, you know, time loops are sort of weirdly in right now, right? Like I say with Russian Doll, but also there's been a bunch of shows like on BBC did something called Another Life, I think, that was like very time loopy, that was quite fun. But like, it's kind of become less of a trope and more of a genre. And this definitely feels like a new entry into the genre. It feels like it's just doing really interesting, fun stuff with it.
Yeah. So that's Timestalker. So it is out in the UK in October, but it is on 4 times at the film festival. So Saturday the 17th at the Cameo at 6:30, Sunday the 18th at 4:45 at Summer Hall, Monday the 19th at 6:45 at 50 George Square, and on Wednesday the 21st, 3:30 p.m, another pay what you can screening, this time at Summer Hall. So Timestalker, a banger, go and see it. Much love to Alice Lowe, love to see it.
There is nothing less glamorous than a film screening at 50 George Square at the Department of Literature, Languages and Cultures. I lived in that building. I cannot believe that that's where the film festival is.
Thanks for that.
That's okay.
But it's like fringy.
It is fringy.
I think that's the
to me,
idea.
it's not fringy. To me, it's you write 80,000 words there. Yeah. I did have to lean across to Ellie and take the mic in order to say that.
I have something to add.
I suspect Alison wouldn't be. Maybe she will. I don't know. I guess she wouldn't mind. But like I imagine all the kind of glossy Q&As and stuff we've done at Cameo,
Yes,
and then it'll just be like the others. So I'll try and get the Cameo screening because you'll probably see Alice Lowe there. I'd imagine. Have they announced I don't think they have announced the guest yet. But I would imagine she would.
She would not be at 50 George Square.
Yeah, I think she would come up.
Okay. All right.
And before I forget again, our Letterboxd ratings. So, Ellie, what did you think? Bearing in mind the rules that we just established about how numbers work.
Yeah. What is a 4.5 in this rubric? What are we calling that? A mid 4.
Yeah, a big 4.
Yeah, it's a soft 4.
A large 4.
But then I guess. But then mid for like young people means bad, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we gotta call it something else.
Average.
All right.
Like, it was a bit mid. Like, it was, no.
All right,
But it wasn't mid.
I thought it meant worse than that.
It's better than a 4. It's better than a 4. It's not a 5, but it's better than a 4. I would give it a 4.5.
Okay. I would give it... What? What's that face for, Annie? This is podcasting. If you got something to say, say it.
I don't have a mic.
I would say it's a 4. I think that it is very inventive, very fun, but a few more laughs and it might have got a larger 4, a more buoyant 4. As it is a solid, stable 4.
So what does the average out to?
I think it's about 4.
Okay.
Man, these letterbox ratings just keep the gift that keeps on giving. And the third and final film of this EIFF preview is My Favourite Cake, which is about, let me check on my notes. It is about an elderly Iranian woman who encounters a lonely taxi driver in Tehran, where female oppression and strict social structures are subverted as a delicate kinship blooms against the odds. I pulled that from the EIFF website. Sorry, EIFF. Because I haven't seen this film and I don't know very much about it. So, Anahit, I might come to you first.
Okay.
And ask you to tell me a bit about this film and whether it's any good.
Yeah, so, I mean, you did sum it up pretty well, by which I mean the film festival summed it up really well, which you would hope that they would do. So it kind of follows this elderly widow, just like really sweet, like really, really lovely. She has like brunch with her friends. They like have a little gossip about like men that they know and how there's no good men out there. Her husband died 30 years before. She's 70 now. Died 30 years before in a car crash on the road. Oh, this is such a digression, but I was talking to my parents really like a couple of weeks ago about how that road from Tehran to Esfahan used to be like really bad, and apparently there would be loads of car crashes. So it is accurate. So the ultimate fact checker. Yeah, My dad.
Anahit's dad can verify
that the roads are bad. So yeah, he had died in a car crash and she had to raise the children by herself, and they have now moved, like migrated to Europe, and she's in this house by herself, and just feels like really lonely. It's a really beautiful exploration of aging and loneliness and kind of these ideas that are quite, like, I think a lot of the time when we think about loneliness, like what has become quite fashionable to think about is that idea of like quite young female loneliness, you know, like that quite disaffected Sally Rooney-ish, which I think is really interesting and really valuable. But I hadn't really seen a film that kind of explores it from that angle before in this particular, which was really interesting. And yeah, she meets this taxi driver. She overhears this taxi driver in a restaurant talking about how he's also alone. And she, in a move that is so bold, it would be bold here, let alone in a society where you could go to fucking prison for this. She's like, do you want to come back to my house? Which I was like, bitch, good for you. So she like invites him back to her house, and they have like this really wholesome like evening where they're like sharing, like she's kind of like making him tea and they're like talking about their lives. And then she has this like illicit wine, because obviously you're not allowed wine in Iran, and then they get like steadily more drunk.
Biggest bottle of wine.
The biggest bottle of fucking wine that looks like solid. Like it's really like that was fermented
it looks like
at
jam
home.
or something.
Yeah. It was crazy. So anyway, she has this bottle of wine and they get steadily more drunk, and then things happen. I found this quite like a strange film. I think like I really liked the beginning of it. I really liked the kind of character study of this woman. And the man was also really sweet, and that stuff was like really beautiful, like the dynamic between them. The ending kind of goes a bit off, and I don't want to spoil it, but it is like, it's one of those films where it's kind of hard to talk about without talking about the end. And when you go on the Letterboxd reviews, actually, it is a whole bunch of people that, like with kind of the spoiler reviews, because I think actually the end really like shifts what the film is. But we're not going to talk about it. But I didn't super love the direction that it went in. I thought also it gestures at a lot of like political stuff. So there's this one really incredible scene where she basically rescues this young girl from the morality police that felt very kind of like timely right now, like after the last couple of years. And obviously the whole like structure of the film is that this loneliness is by and large kind of like state created, right? Like if you were not really allowed to like socialize with people of the opposite gender, if you were like forced to kind of isolate and you have your neighbors spying on you, then you can't just very easily get remarried or like have a boyfriend or have this kind of like connection. And so it is gesturing at these ideas. But we were talking earlier, Jamie, in the office about how most Iranian films, they have like this kind of quite allegorical or quite, they tell stories at like a bit of a slant angle, and there's this like depth to them. Whereas this one, that was the point of it. Like as much as like you would see the morality piece and you see the neighbor, and that was kind of it. That was at the level at which it was sort of critiquing what was happening. I also found it kind of like it has the sort of very high quality like specs of like a YouTube video almost. Like it has a little, you know, when something is so high quality that it almost looks low quality. Do you know what I mean?
It's the is it a bit uncanny valley?
A little.
Like when you see like a video game from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're like, that guy almost looks real, but he's so smooth in the face.
Yeah, they were just like very smooth and very like, the light was really bright. I know there was just like an element of it. I just didn't think it was formalistically or stylistically that interesting, I suppose. But it is like this really, really sweet story. It also has some great, there are some like truly insane Letterboxd reviews for this one. This one person was like, I guess men just always get what they want in this society. That I'm like, what film did you watch? What are you talking about? And then there was another one that was like, well, if it isn't an Iranian movie about a cab driver. Which, yeah, okay, fair play.
That's a good joke.
That is a good joke. Yeah, so I liked it. I didn't think it was incredible, which is probably good because it kind of proves I'm not just like a shill for every Iranian film we ever review. But I think it's maybe worth watching. I think it gives like a snapshot of the country. I just don't know if it was cinematically that interesting. Does that make sense?
It does. I've described this as I think I'm sure a lot of people said this, but before sunrise for pensioners. That's essentially it. But I guess the difference is there's a real stake for this woman, because she lives in a society where she's meant to be invisible, and once her happiness is not important. And I like that she's not going to accept that any longer. I love her brazen I'm going to pick up this guy. I think it's interesting. I think she's a little bit inspired by that scene where she rescues that young woman. She basically says to the young woman, you need to, I remember before the revolution, you have to stand up to these people. Yeah. They're bullies. But then she's a little bit inspired because the girl is just going to go and meet her boyfriend anyway. She's not scared. And there's a nice little moment where they go off together. And I think that was her catalyst for right, I'm going to get this as well. I'm going to find a bit of happiness. So yeah, and I love the scenes of her domestic life. Actually, her life seems amazing. I think her life sounds lovely, hanging out with her pals. She doesn't wake up till noon. There's a whole running gag about
fucking sick.
Yeah, oh my god, this is amazing. She can't go swimming in the morning because it's ladies only swimming in the morning. But it's too early for me. I can't wake up till noon o'clock. So anyway, I liked all that. She's got a lovely garden, and yeah, most of the film is a scene of just in her house with this guy and just entertaining them, they're dancing. It's just really sweet, and I kind of love that pair. It's kind of similar to the last film, actually. It's really about the chemistry between the two actors, which is really lovely. And yeah, I think there is a kind of political message to it. I think it's I get what you mean. It's not in any way metaphorical. It's very in your face. You have literally a nosy neighbour who's could rat you out to the police. But the film is quite ballsy. I believe the Iranian government did raid the office belonging to the filmmakers and tried to get the film, but luckily they'd already copied it and put it somewhere else. So
it's just such loser behavior. Do you know what I mean? Fucking hell. For this little film about these two little old people that fancy each other.
Yeah.
Get a fucking.
Well, that's what I mean. It's in any other, in many ways, this is such an unoffensive film. It's about two lonely people finding happiness and love. Essentially, that's what most of the film's about. And at the edges, it has these kind of political ideas. But yeah, it's it's the most gentlest of political film you're ever going to watch. But yeah, I actually thought it looked kind of good. It's shot with kind of tableau style where, you would just see her pottering about doing her day-to-day thing, doing her shopping or, making a cake or, getting ready for a dinner party. And like I say, her life seems really nice, but the loneliness kind of does build up. There's scenes where she tries to have Zoom calls with her family and they're kind of too busy. And she's a lovely moment where she tries to show a blanket she's been making for the daughter and they say, oh, sorry, I need to leave. So I just thought a really nice film. It reminded me, there's kind of been a few films recently about kind of older women's sort of who still want to have sex lives. So I was thinking of, do you remember Gloria from a few years ago, the Argentinian film? Was it Argentinian?
Yeah, I never saw it, but I know.
It was remade with Julianne Moore, which didn't quite make sense because she's a bit more glamorous than the original actor, but that was also quite good, I thought. And then there was Aquarius, the Brazilian film, which was also excellent. So yeah, this seems to be something that's coming up a bit more. I would add that in with this genre. I think this is of a piece with those films. Yeah, really charmed. And I get what you mean. The twist is a bit kind of in your face, blunt, and does sort of change the whole kind of nature of the film, I guess. And it gives it
tonally as
well. Yeah, it gives
a
kind of more bitter flavour. But I didn't mind. I mean, it seems to me not realistic, but it's not a film which would really have a happy ending. Even if what happens didn't happen, like you say, this society wouldn't let them just be a couple. The idea of them just hanging out and making food together and cutting herbs and which seems perfectly innocent and nice, would not be allowed. So the fact that it does have a kind of more kind of tragic ending sort of makes perfect sense. I hope that didn't spoil anything.
Yeah, I feel who will crack this code? But I think it's fine. It was also quite predictable. I could see it coming.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, you have seen the film. Yeah, this ending.
No, I don't mean Jamie talking is predictable. I meant the ending.
I know exactly where he's going with it.
While watching, you can kind of guess that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's lovely. If you just like an old person having fun and dancing around and like being sweet and like, it's like, I want that person to be my granny. I want her to make me like the tea and like the pears or whatever she was making.
I can make you that kind of tea.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
All right.
Yeah. Bake me a cake. It looks really good.
All
I
right.
love how you just rustle a cake.
Yeah,
as well. Like,
yeah.
I had
Yeah,
no
that's
clue.
what I like.
Yeah, I love it.
So my favourite cake, quite good it sounds like. Friday the 16th at 6 p.m. at Summer Hall, Saturday the 17th at midday at InSpace, and again at 6:30 at Anahit's favourite venue at Edinburgh Film Festival, 50 George Square. And then on the Tuesday the 20th, 10:45 a.m, the Pay What You Want show to round everything off at The Cameo. Letterboxd scores for this one.
I would say 3.
What kind of 3?
I would say 3.
Okay. Jamie?
I would say this is probably a low 4. Like a
So a 3.5.
so
A 2.
so it's like a 4.07, so like rounded down to 4.
So a 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't be clearer than that, could it? And I think on that note, we're probably about done. So,
Did we want to? How long have we been recording? Ooh, we have time. Does anyone want to recommend a Fringe show?
that's a good point.
Fuck
Yeah,
it, we
the festivals continue, and as we've discussed earlier, they're all on at the same time. So make your recommendations and immediately give everyone contradictory plans. Jamie, have you seen anything yet?
I saw VL, the film. It's the show by Kieran Hurley and I can't remember his writing partner. But they did a show, I think I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, called Square Go. And it was also at the Roundhouse in Summerhall. And it's about 2 kids who go to this high school. And it's like, yeah, it's a very funny film. I keep saying film. Sorry, I'm confused. We're on a film podcast. It's a very funny play.
He's ontologically confused.
Yeah, but it's actually very cinematic, actually. So, like, it's essentially the last play. It was about 2 kids waiting in a bathroom before a big fight at school because the bully's going to beat up one of the kids. This one is the same 2 kids. They're waiting at a bus stop to go to the school dance, and one of them has to kiss a girl because he's been called virgin lips at school, and he's getting bullied for it, and this is his only time to do it. So, but it's very cinematic in the way that because they use the roundhouse in a really fun way. That one of the characters plays all the other characters essentially, and he uses the roundhouse to like transform to do flashbacks. He plays all the teachers and all the bullies, and this kid who raps in a kind of Eminem style, who's a very bad rapper, but is also very funny and like made up a rap about his virgin lips. So like, and it's full of like Scottish vernacular. It's a bit kind of toxic masculinity as a teenage boy, basically. But there's actually a little queer edge, actually, which didn't have in Square Go as well. So there's a bit about the kind of erotic intensity between teen boys, and it's really, really, really witty. If you know Kieran Hurley's work in particular, he's really good with dialogue, and especially kind of like working class Scottish dialogue. And the Roundhouse is a great venue because every seat's great, so I would go and see that.
Excellent. It is called The Roundabout, but that's trifling minor details aside.
The Roundabout.
Get me for getting...
I deserve that.
The twist ending no one saw coming. Kieran Hurley wrote Beats, didn't he?
He wrote Beats. Yeah, he's like kind of like... What else has he done? He's done like a few things like...
he's also so solid on Twitter.
Yeah. Is it Mouthpiece was also very good from years ago. He's like, he's very kind of...
He's very good, very prolific Scottish playwright.
Yes, so. And I apologise to his writing partner because I can't remember his name, but, like I say, they also did Square Go together.
I saw The Chaos That Has Been and Will No Doubt Return at Summerhall, that is set in Luton in the austerity years and is so fucking good. Like, so high energy, so just like full of life. Oh my God, fucking loved it. And then I saw Lessons on Revolution, also at Summerhall, that is about like a student occupation uprising in LSE in the late 60s and kind of parallels with kind of radical movements today. That was really, really good. And the sexy clowns, our favorite sexy gay clowns, Chloe and Natasha, are back with a new show, Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson, or God, whoever reads it first, finds it first, something like that. And that was sick. So I would recommend those.
Yeah, I was away this weekend, so I've not seen anything. But
God bless.
tonight, I'm going to see my first few shows, including Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson,
Yeah.
which I'm very excited for because I'm always deeply entertained by Chloe and Natasha. And tonight, I'm also going to see Luke Rollison, Let Down Your Hair at Pleasance. I think my partner and I are big fans of Extraordinary, and I think that since he was sort of cast as like a romantic lead in the show, he's like doing a whole heartthrob thing, but also he's a professionally trained clown. I imagine it's going to be a good time.
Cool. So that was Fringe recommendations. We talked about the film festival. We got a bunch of people's names wrong. I certainly would like to apologize. Yeah, we came up with a new way of numbering things. I would certainly like to apologize to Carol Kane. No disrespect. I just didn't double check it.
No, that's okay.
It's fine. I can take it all out in the edit.
No, don't you dare. That's the coward's way out.
Just bleeping myself every 2 minutes. So, yes, all that remains to be done is thank Jamie.
Cheers, Pierre.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Pierre.
Thanks, Anahit.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. The Edinburgh International Film Festival starts on Thursday, the 15th of August. 1 week from when you're listening to this podcast, if you listen to it on the day it comes out. And if you're at the opening party, we will see you there. Will I wear my lilac dungarees again? Who's to say? Is that cocktail attire?
Are we dressing up? Because I have a dress that I want to wear.
Well, I
it
believe the
fancy?
dress code is cocktail.
Ooh.
And I looked this up, and they seem to say that cocktail was anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
I think if you wear a bow tie with it, you're fine.
But then they also said that cocktail could be like a kind of Ryan Gosling style, like tan suit jacket with a t-shirt underneath. I think the thing about cocktail dress code at film festival opening party is if you are cool, you can wear anything.
Are you cool, Peter?
No.
Okay.
So it'll be a dark suit for me.
So back at the beginning.
But who knows, if you do see me wearing an ill-fitting dark suit, do say hello.
You need to remember, like, Saoirse Ronan, who's very cool, is going to be there. So do you want to be like known as the guy who's wearing the rubbish clothes next to Saoirse when you get photographed together?
Makes a good point.
I'm known, if there's a photo of Saoirse Ronan at the opening of the film festival and someone says, hang on a minute, is that Peter from the Cineskinny podcast?
Wearing his dungaree
Wearing
shorts.
his lilac dungaree shorts. As I live and breathe. What a guy. But yes, the film festival starts next week. We will be back in 2 weeks. We're probably going to be at the new HFM studio, actually.
Yeah.
Ground floor. We're going to be, I mean, if you thought this was chaotic, just wait until I've had a coffee immediately before we go on mic.
Yeah, in that little studio.
Yeah. In the doom room.
Yeah, with like a window out to the world. Fuck.
Do not come and say hi to us when we're recording. But yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Bye.